Every once in a while, someone still very new to anime joins my streams and asks me, "Hey Jinyo, what type of anime would you recommend to me?" My reply is usually always the same. Well, what type of genre do you like? Someone who is very interested in war movies like Saving Private Ryan, for example, might not be very interested in Titanic. The same applies with anime, and that is why I wanted to watch every anime genre explained in 12 minutes by Arikendo.
Shonen is one of the biggest anime genres, even though it's the most misunderstood, because it's not actually an anime genre. Shonen directly translates to boy, meaning that it's less of a genre and more of a demographic. And even though shonen is technically targeted towards young boys, a huge amount of people outside that demographic also consume shonen anime, making it a pretty useless distinction when trying to differentiate them. For example, Death Note and Chainsaw Man are both published in shonen magazines, making them both technically—
Little confession, I still haven't watched Chainsaw Man, but it is on my list, and Death Note is in my top 3 of best anime of all time. I need to specify the first part of Death Note. The second part sucks balls.
shonen, even though their tones and themes couldn't be farther apart. This makes shonen a very nebulous term when describing anime. But anime fans will still use shonen as a genre. But when you hear this, you can assume that they are usually talking about battle shonen. This is an actual genre because it does consist of shonen anime where the primary focus is on battle, usually with superhuman abilities.
When I think about shonen, I usually think about stuff like Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece. Those are like very typical shonen for me.
Or Bleach. The first modern battle shonen that popularized the genre would probably be Dragon Ball. Examples of great battle shonen that follow in Dragon Ball's footsteps would be Hunter x Hunter or Naruto. Examples of more mature shonen would be Full Metal Alchemist or Death Note. Comedy anime are all about making you laugh, but usually get a bad rep from the anime community for, well, not making us laugh. But it's important to remember that as English viewers, we lose a lot of context when an anime is translated.
It's my number one.
Sometimes Japanese humor relies on wordplay to inject humor into an exchange, which can often get lost on us. Another gripe anime fans have with a lot of comedy anime is that they'll heavily rely on a single joke, with changes only happening to the surrounding context or situation. But this isn't always a bad thing. Examples of good comedy anime that focus on a single punchline are One Punch Man or Sakamoto-kun. Examples of other good comedy anime that don't rely on a single joke would be Nichijou or Psyche K. Seinen is a much less recognized term to—
Gintama also is a shonen. It's both. It is actually a very, very awesome, funny comedy anime, but it's also shonen. It perfectly manages to merge both of those genres, and that's why I love it so much. Most episodes are like standalone comedy episodes, which are very funny, with some very serious arcs in between those funny bits, and that's why it's so dear to me. And Gintama is also one of those animes which become more funny the more anime you've watched in your life.
To most casual anime viewers, but it essentially just translates to youth, as in it is targeted towards young adults, specifically adult males. Seinen is again not a genre, but instead a demographic. An easy way to tell if a manga is published in a seinen magazine is if they directly use the word young. One of the most widely known seinen manga, Berserk, was originally published in a magazine called Young Animal, which often contains pinups along chapters of the manga. Because seinen manga are targeted towards an older audience, they often deal with much darker themes and storylines. Examples of this are Vinland Saga, where themes of revenge and slavery are prominent, and Berserk, which is personally my favorite thing of all time.
There's a lot of confessions I make today. I haven't watched Berserk. It's on my never-ending list.
Sci-fi is an anime genre with a heavy emphasis on technology or futuristic elements, and it is significantly different from Western sci-fi. Sci-fi used to be a very popular genre in anime, most likely originating with the anime Astro Boy. However, the golden age of sci-fi is widely regarded to be in the 80s and 90s, meaning that many anime fans aren't well versed in the best sci-fi anime, including Akira, Ghost in the Shell, and Cowboy Bebop. It's worth noting that shows like these popularized the cyberpunk genre across the world, which is why I would point you towards cyberpunk edgerunners if you're looking for a modern sci-fi anime. Slice of life is a controversial genre among anime fans that most avoid because
What genre is not controversial? I feel like every genre of anime is controversial because anime fans, myself included, we are very verbal when it comes to expressing our ideas, and we take those things to heart. So if someone is criticizing our favorite anime or our favorite anime genre, it's just bound to create conflict. Just look at the One Piece fans, like the diehard One Piece fans, always clashing with the Dragon Ball fans for some reason. Like on Twitter, they are always fighting.
a lot of people find it boring. The general idea of slice of life is, like the name implies, to capture a slice of someone's regular day-to-day life. It's usually characterized by a much slower pace with more emphasis on what we would consider mundane experiences. Some people think that slice of life means no development happens across the series, but that's not necessarily true. Oftentimes the genre is paired with comedy, drama, or romance. Early slice of life anime that were very influential include Azumanga Daioh, Hidamari Sketch, and Lucky Star.
I don't know
if you
any
want
one
a
of
modern
these.
slice of life to enjoy, I would recommend Kobayashi Dragon Maid or Nanon Biori. Romance is another controversial genre because it often takes way too long for anything to actually happen relationship-wise, but
that's my main gripe with romance anime. The endless blue balling, like 8 seasons, 8 years or 10 years of blue balling. It's just something I don't like watching anymore. Just too old for blue balling. I want to see either sex happening or at least kisses, right? But if they're still holding hands 8 years into the anime, I just cannot do that. I'm sorry. I'm not the target audience for this.
this can be chalked up to cultural differences. In Western shows, the romance genre isn't necessarily about whether the couple will get together. It's about if their relationship will stand the test of time. But with romance anime, it's more often about if their relationship will happen at all. That's why oftentimes a romance anime will take its time getting the main characters together. There are also many common tropes in which a person mishears the other confession, causing the entire relationship dynamic to be reset. This can be frustrating, and personally I hate the trope too. So if you want some good romance anime that still take a while to develop but don't use those tropes, check out Kaguya-sama or Golden Time. If you want a romance anime that's more akin to Western TV shows, check out Horimiya, although I will say that I think the manga is better. Isekai literally translates to different or other world. It's technically a subgenre of fantasy that revolves around a person from our world being transported into a fantasy one. This can happen through many different ways, but in Isekai it usually happens using a portal or reincarnation. While many people think of Isekai as a modern genre, it's actually a very old genre. The idea of going to another world was always a popular one. I mean, think about it. Alice in Wonderland came out in 1865.
True.
Really the first Isekai, if you ask
Alice
me.
in
But
Wonderland
if
is an
modern
Isekai.
Anime, the originator can actually be traced back to Zero no Tsukaima, which helped popularize Naruke web novels. If you want to learn more about the history of modern Isekai, check out the video I made on that subject. But basically, Zero no Tsukaima fanfiction is actually what inspired light novels like Re:Zero, which in turn inspired stories like Mushoku Tensei. However, the popularity of adapting light novels into anime really began with Sword Art Online and its huge success, despite the fact that SAO isn't really an isekai to begin with. Fantasy is a very all-encompassing term.
Sword Art Online, I talked about it many times before, but Sword Art Online, the first season was almost perfect. There was romance, the premise was nice, the build-up was nice. I think they should have left it with season 1. I think it was a big mistake to do season 2, 3, I don't know how many seasons there are now of Sword Art Online.
For any story with fantastical elements. This means that it can actually include shonen fantasy like Hunter x Hunter or Full Metal Alchemist, but it also includes high fantasy like Frieren. It covers dark fantasy like Claymore or Berserk, but it also covers historical fantasy like Demon Slayer or Inuyasha. While in the West, we tend to think of fantasy as mainly just high fantasy. This is because Tolkien's works have been so influential to our art. In anime, fantasy usually takes inspiration from a many number of things, so in a certain sense, you could say that fantasy is one of the biggest genres in anime as a whole, and for that reason, it's hard to give a specific recommendation for the genre. Shoujo is another demographical term and not necessarily a genre. It directly translates to girl, so shoujo anime are more often targeted towards younger girls. Shoujo anime tend to be romances or dramas, but a big subgenre that emerged from shoujo is the magical girls genre, where girls transform into superheroes with magic powers. One of the first examples of a
no one could escape Sailor Moon. If you grew up in the 90s like I did, it was everywhere. Every girl was Sailor Moon.
Shoujo anime is Sally the Witch, who is technically a magical girl. However, not all magical girl anime are shoujos, as again, shoujo is a demographic and not a genre-defining term. Other important shoujo anime include The Rose of Versailles and Sailor Moon. If I had to pick a shoujo series that acts as a sort of originating point for modern shoujo, I might pick Fruit Baskets or Sailor Moon. But to be honest, as a guy, I don't really watch much shoujo, and I'm pretty unqualified to talk about this in particular. So if anyone in the comments has a better idea of what series really popularized modern shoujo, let me know. Anyway, recommendations for...
As a kid, I watched Sailor Moon sometimes. Like, it's not like I waited for Sailor Moon to come on, but when it was on TV, I watched it. Especially for those transformations, if you know what I mean.
modern shoujo that I enjoy would be Yona of the Dawn and My Next Life as a Villainess, which is actually a new subgenre of isekai that involves someone entering the world of a dating sim for women, but as the villain. I also suspect that this villainess subgenre will continue to grow. Josei is another demographical term, but it translates to women, meaning that most Josei anime are targeted towards adult women. However, like shonen and seinen, the lines between shoujo and josei are very blurry. In fact, the thumbnail for this video uses Nana as a Josei anime, but Nana is actually a shoujo anime because it was published in a shoujo magazine. Now, the reason I still put in the thumbnail is because I haven't actually watched any major Josei anime, and this is the only mature shoujo anime I've tried. That being said, I can't give any great recommendations, so I'm just using my AnimeList catalog here, and using that, good modern Josei anime to try would be Chihaya Firu and Rakugo Shinju. Sports anime is one of the oldest and...
I love sports anime. Sorry for stopping so much, but my first anime was a sports anime. It was Gambare Kikazu.
Nicht zu glauben! Ball und Torwart sind im Tor!
I grew up in Germany, played football for most of my life, so Gambare Kikazu and then later on Captain Tsubasa was the perfect match for me.
Long-lasting genres, usually depicting a high school or collegiate sports team and their journey. Because sports anime vary widely based on the sport itself, they are all pretty different, but if I were to point to a show that exemplifies modern sports
basket,
anime,
I watched the first season, it was also pretty cool.
Single-handedly increased the popularity of basketball across Japan. And in the same vein, Haikyuu has done the same for men's volleyball across Japan.
These
are examples of
the
more
cultural
impact
of anime is insane.
And it's worth noting that there are more unrealistic sports anime where characters border on the line of superhuman. Prince of Tennis and Kuroko no Basket are good examples of shows like this, where characters are pulling off insane moves that aren't...
Also, I might add, in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, the animation, the quality of animation of sports anime is just superb. Probably because they have to like deal with very fast movement, and if you make a sports anime with not that many frames or high quality frames, it will just look silly. Just like the second season or the first part of the second season of Blue Lock was just basically still frames and it looked like shit and everyone was unhappy with it.
Usually possible. If you want a good modern sports anime, I would personally recommend Blue Lock, although I think the manga is better. Ecchi is a slang term in the Japanese language that means different things in different contexts.
My favorite genre.
It can be an adjective meaning sexy, dirty, or naughty.
Not really.
It can be a verb meaning to have sex, and it can even be a noun where someone is basically a pervert. Ecchi as a genre is characterized by hypersexualized moments in a show, often
High School of the Dead.
Service,
I actually watched High School of the Dead. It was fantastic.
To force its characters in certain positions. Although shows can have a little bit of fan service and not be an ecchi, when a show regularly pounds these scenes to the viewer or places emphasis on the sexual themes in the show, it qualifies as an ecchi. Now, it's worth noting that ecchi isn't really a genre you'll find on its own, because if you only wanted sexual content in a show, then, well, you might as well watch hentai.
Alright guys, I just got these brand new headphones.
Mecha is a very old subgenre of sci-fi that's all about giant robots. A big reason that it's gotten so popular is because of the toys that were marketed towards Japanese citizens. In Mecha, there are two main subgenres, super robot and real robots. Super robots often refer to supersized, impossible-looking mechas, while real robots try and match real-world physics and limitations. Before Gundam, super robots were the most popular subgenre, but Mobile Suit Gundam caused a revolution in the mecha genre, popularizing the real robot. However, that wasn't the end of the super robot genre. Evangelion popularized the super robot genre once again. And although the mecha genre is still widely popular, owing favors to super fans who buy and build Gunplas, its popularity has definitely dwindled in the last decade. If you want recommendations of solid mecha shows today, I would recommend you Evangelion and one of my all-time favorites, Code Geass. More modern iterations.
If you watched Death Note, the natural progression would be Code Geass because Lelouch is very similar to Yagami Lights. It's a fantastic show. I'm not a huge fan of mecha shows, but Code Geass is very, very good.
Of Gundam that are supposedly good are Iron-Blooded Orphans and The Witch from Mercury. The music anime genre is a little interesting, because in the West, many of us associate the music genre with musicals, where characters will break out into song and dance.
I
hate
like musicals.
But from my knowledge, there are very few anime that are actual musicals, which is probably a cultural difference. When music is heavily used in an anime, it's because the anime's focus is on music itself. So it's better to think of music as a genre like sports, where the main characters are usually involved in making the music themselves.
I don't think I've
anime
ever
and the
watched a
genre
music
include
anime.
Love Live, which started the anime idol trend, K-On, which greatly popularized the slice of life and music genre.
I know
And
K-On!
If you want
I
a
never
modern
watched
music
it.
anime that's mixed with comedy, I would really recommend Bocchi the Rock. The harem genre is a subgenre of romance that heavily focuses on polyamorous relationships, typically with one male and many females. Sometimes the genre can be twisted into a reverse harem, where the woman is a main character with multiple male love interests. Personally, I'm still waiting for the bisexual terror that is a mixed harem, but anime is clearly too scared to do that. Harem as a genre gained popularity due to
Why
dating
not?
simulators, which explains why most harem anime used to be based on visual novels. Most anime fans look down on harem anime because
I gotta go back. Was that the Colonel from KFC? Colonel Sanders.
explains why most harem anime used to be based on visual
looks
novels.
nice.
Most anime fans look down on harem anime because they're pretty unrealistic in portraying how a boring average guy can pull so many baddies. But let's be honest, the vast majority of harem anime is for horny teenagers who want to self-insert with the main character. But at the same time, there are a good amount of harem anime that still use its premise to tell a compelling story, which often leads to something called a shipping war, where fans choose their best waifu in hopes that they end up with the main character, aka some of these people need to touch grass. An anime that helps
I wouldn't say that. I mean, people are shipping characters in like Western shows as well. As soon as you see male and female on screen, and sometimes even male on male or female on female, people will start shipping them. There will be fanfics and whatnot. I think that is nothing you need to be ashamed of. I think that's just very natural.
create this trend and cause the harem genre to explode in popularity was Love Hina. Examples of modern shows that have a battle royale of baddies would be quintessential quintuplets. If you want examples of a harem that I think are genuinely good, I would recommend The World Only God Knows and 100 Girlfriends, just for being a little more realistic but also fun in the development of all the romances. If you found any mistakes in the video, leave a comment, because as much as I've been watching anime, damn near a decade now, obviously I can't watch every single genre the same. And as always,
That was fantastic, very informative in just 12 minutes. It helped me learn something new, and I hope it will teach you a way to find your perfect anime that is suitable for your taste. I'm pretty sure in those 2 decades of anime that I've watched, I watched an anime from every genre except for music. My favorite anime of all time, as I said, is a mix of shonen and comedy with Gintama, and obviously Dragon Ball. Code Geass is something I loved. I don't think I watched a pure romance anime, but I watched anime that had romance elements, like currently, for example, Dandadan. I do enjoy that. I do enjoy when our main character does something for his waifu, or if, like, the other way around, the waifu does something for her husbando, right? I enjoy that. I love those scenes where Vegeta gets freaking angry and turns into Super Saiyan 2 because someone slept Bulma.
How dare you! That's my...
I hope this video helped you. I enjoyed this a lot, so hopefully you give the original creator Arikendo also a like and subscribe to his channel and to mine, obviously. And I would love to know, what is your favorite anime genre? Or give me your top 5 if you cannot decide. Your favorite genre and your favorite anime. Go now in the comment section. Alright, see you next time. Bye bye.